Um, One final question, and I cannot, talk to Pranay without talking about open source.
Yeah.
So for all US India founders out there, early stages, and I would say even kind of bigger companies, right? What is your 2 cents around using open source, contributing to open source, right? Like, what are the advantages, and how can they how can the Indian startup ecosystem really kind of use it as a strength?
Yeah, I think there should be reason why you want to open source, right? So I see many founders today which who reach out to me that, hey, like this is what I'm building. Should I open source it, right? So open source, many people see it as a way to generate traction. That hey, like if I open source my code, people will naturally come. But sometimes it may be true. It's it's not given. At the end of the day, even if you're building an open source product, you have to build something which creates value. Uh, and you have to think that why open sourcing it makes sense, right? For example, in our case, because we are a product which people install in their infrastructure, right? They install part of our code in their infrastructure and send data to us, and that's why we're able to help them analyze and like get insights from it, right? For us, for people to trust us, it's it helps if you're open source because then people can more easily trust you. So you have to figure out why you want to open source.
Yeah.
It's it's if you just open source and think that hey, like things will fall, I don't think that happens. And open source is just saying that you're making the code source open. You still have to do the all the same things of which any company does, like figure out what product you should build, figure out how you should distribute it. Open source can help you in some way that if people care about what you're building, it acts as a like way for people to discover it, helps you get trust, helps you get into sometimes into bigger companies can start using your product because who can't use SaaS, etc. But you still need to build a product which works. You still need to figure out why people should use you. You still need to figure out how people will discover you. You still need to figure out if they discover you, how will they use you? Will they get value? So all the basic questions remain same, right? Uh, the other piece is that if you are doing open source, you are also losing a lot.
Mhm.
So it's not a free lunch, right?
Yeah.
So that you essentially are letting people run it, so it reduces the amount of value you can capture, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that in turns implies that you have to create a lot much value,
Mhm.
more value. But if that product or if that category doesn't have like you can't create that much value and you reduce the percent you can capture, does it make sense to open source it, right? uh, you also sort of always have to keep your community along with you. So uh, you have to answer their questions. So it takes effort, right? Even from our event today, we spent 20-25% of our engineers' time on like just answering community's questions, having this community goal. So there's a trade-off, right? For our case, it one because we wanted it's a product which goes in their infra, so there's need of trust. And then second, we have a fundamental view that hey, like there should be a product which is open source, which should be as good as that like the other proprietary products, right? And we believe that if there's a product which is as good as proprietary tools and there's open source product, people will choose open source product. But that's also because our users are developers. If your users are marketeers, do they care about open source? Uh, so yeah, I think it's not a free lunch. You should think about it. But if it works, it's like a great way to sort of at least get users from across the globe. So for example, SigNoz is global from day one. We have, I think we published somewhere that we have users from some 80 plus countries, etc., who use SigNoz today, right? Though that like also comes with the other disadvantage that you have to be awake 24 hours a day to support every time, and that's why being remote, which we were discussing earlier, right?
Correct.
But yeah, essentially it has both its trade-offs. We are a fan of open source, but it's not a freelance. You have to think why it makes sense for your business or for what you are trying to do. Does it help your customer? Does it help you build a better product? But if yes, go for it. we want more open source projects in the world.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I think what I'm taking away on open source is it's not a hack, right? It's a philosophy and it has to
Yeah.
be kind of in the DNA of the company. It has to, second, make business sense, right? And third, it comes with trade-offs, right? And real business trade-offs. And I think any founder has to be kind of aware of all these three things and then make an informed decision.